Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, Luminate Medical is developing a product called Lily, which aims to prevent hair loss in patients receiving chemotherapy treatment. Here to tell us more about this revolutionary product is Aaron Hannon, co-founder and CEO of Luminate Medical. Firstly, Aaron, I'd like to get an insight into your previous startup experience.
Good morning, Carl. Thanks for having me. Yeah, for sure. My previous startup experience actually started when I was in school. So my grandfather was diagnosed with a stroke when I was quite young. And then so for the, I suppose, majority of my life that I knew him, he had significant post-stroke paralysis symptoms. And so for me, growing up, disability, I suppose, or lack of functionality was something that was very common in our house and something we had to try and overcome and accommodate for. And so when I got older and into engineering, I was really focused on trying to build solutions that could help, make the world a more inclusive place for my granddad. And so when I was in school, I started doing that, and ultimately that kind of culminated in the design of Enable Arm, which was a voice-activated headset, which would allow people with no physical dexterity to be able to shave and carry out basic personal care tasks independently, just using their voice.
And what did you learn from your experience of establishing Enable Arm?
I think for me, it was an incredible learning experience, kind of starting that out as a technologist, but ultimately finishing that experience as an entrepreneur. So, as a technologist, you try and build technology that will make the world better and solve very specific use cases, but maybe you don't have the full insight that to bring about that change, you've got to be able to deliver that at scale and generate a commercial return so that you can get stakeholders to back your project. So I think for me, the learning was, quality of life is really important, that there's a lot of interesting stuff to do in that space, but that the important thing is to take, big shots at big targets and to aim for innovations which have scale and a commercial attractiveness to them that means that you can actually realize the impact you want to have as a technologist.
So in 2020, you co-founded Luminate Medical. Tell us about the story behind this business and where the idea for Lily came from.
Yeah, for sure. So I suppose kind of very much following on from my background in Enable Arm, I'm really passionate about quality of life and patient-centered care. I think in healthcare in general, we often think of disease-destroying capability almost as if diseases could somehow be separated from the person where that disease is happening. And I think that we can do a lot better than that and think that, ultimately when we're treating a disease, we're treating a whole person. And so what I'm very passionate about is how can we design innovations that could look after the whole person. And so at that time, I was working at the National University of Ireland here in Galway in the Translational Medical Device Lab. And one of the things I got to work on was oncology research, so interviewing patients and understanding kind of what they were going through. I was actually sitting beside my now co-founder Barbara and Martin, who were finishing a project in microwave imaging for breast cancer at the time. So they were actually designing new ways to image and detect breast cancer. And so as part of that, they would sometimes be sitting in the same room using this equipment while someone was finding out that they were, diagnosed with breast cancer for the first time, which is obviously extremely emotional moment for someone, and a lot of questions go through their head. What's going to happen to me? Am I going to be bald? Am I going to be really sick? And so through that experience, their experience of what cancer patients were going through and my experience of building technology for people with a real quality of life focus, we kind of came around this idea that we could really do something to support quality of life for cancer patients. And based on speaking to patients and what they were going through, hair loss seemed like a natural starting point.
Well, 47% of patients have cited hair loss as the most traumatic side effect of cancer treatment. So how will Lily actually prevent this?
So the Lily device is a wearable cap that patients use just as they start chemo treatment during the actual infusion and then for an hour and a half afterwards. So essentially what the device does is it interferes with the blood flow around the hair, around each little hair root, and prevents chemotherapy from being delivered to the hair root itself by closing off blood flow while chemo is active in the body. And that's really the core principle of what we're trying to do. Chemo does a really effective job at destroying fast-dividing cells, and we need that in areas of the body where there's a cancerous tumor. So if someone has a breast cancer, then we need the chemo to be active in the breast, destroying those tumor cells. but we don't need it to be active in the hair follicles. And that's why our device interferes with chemo from being delivered there so that we can protect the hair follicles.
Now, it seems straightforward and an absolute no-brainer, so why wasn't it done before?
So I think it's really interesting to look at kind of the state of the market at the moment. I think in general, devices which focus on quality of life for cancer patients have typically been kind of neglected in terms of development by larger medtech companies. We tend in medtech to focus on making disease-destroying capability more effective, more efficient, easier to run more processes, and we don't typically innovate in quality of life. So that's probably one reason. But there definitely are devices out there on the market that can prevent hair loss. They use cooling technologies compared to Lilly's compression-based technology. So there definitely has been some innovation in the space before. I guess the unique take that we're bringing on it is that we're not using any cooling or thermal effect, which means that we can deliver a treatment for patients that's significantly more comfortable and, importantly, significantly more reliable because we're not influenced by environmental factors which impact the temperature-based solutions.
So how effective will Lily be when compared to the other hair loss prevention methods?
So I think that's definitely a really interesting question for us to answer. We're going to treat our first patients this year, which is really exciting, and hopefully from that we'll be able to generate some data. But I can say in our preclinical testing to date, we've been able to show really statistically significant results, which show fantastic hair retention in up to 80% of subjects, which is a brilliant result for us to get at the preclinical stage. And the testing that we've done so far in healthy humans has shown that the effect of our device is really, really consistent, significantly more so than the cooling devices that are out there.
What are the timelines for bringing this product to market?
So for us right now, like I was saying, we're going to treat our first patients this year, which for us as a team is really, really exciting. That's kind of where you want to be, bringing that impact to people for the first time. So we'll treat our first patients in Europe this year. Following on from that, we're looking to run a clinical study actually in Ireland and one of our sites in Galway and potentially also another site in the US next year. And based on the data we generate from those sites, we'll be looking to get FDA approval then in 2024. And based then on the data that we generate in the US market, we'll be looking to launch the product commercially in Europe, the likes of Ireland, Germany and France, as soon as we can.
And have you patented the Lily product?
Yeah, so definitely the patent process is obviously really important in the medical devices space. It's a very competitive industry. And so that's one of the things that we're really focused on, is making sure we have a secure IP position. So we've definitely got more than one patent application going at the moment on the Lily device and also on potential future applications of the technology.
What route to market will you use? Are you going to sell directly to oncology facilities or to patients themselves?
I think this is actually a really interesting industry. This is something that patients are very motivated about, and sometimes it's about trying to convince their clinician in some cases to help patients actually access this type of treatment. And so I think the answer is very much dependent on the geography. So in the US, it's very much something that we think patients will drive and that patients will have access to directly, versus in Europe, we tend to do better at socialized healthcare and making things available to everybody. And so our hope would be that governments will reimburse this technology in Europe and that we'll be able to make it broadly available through a patient's oncologist and nursing team.
Now, Luminate Medical recently raised €4.7 million in funding. How will this money be used to speed up the overall process in bringing this to market?
So definitely the investment that we've raised and the grant funding that we've been able to get from Enterprise Ireland has been a massive boost for us and definitely accelerates our progress. So that funding allows us to run clinical studies this year and next year to get crucial data to prove the efficacy and the safety of the product. And it'll allow us to get all the way to making a submission for FDA clearance. So those are the key activities. It's getting our clinical data, getting our regulatory submission together, and ultimately putting the supply chain in place to be able to bring this product to patients and actually make an impact.
And while your primary focus for now is on bringing Lily to the market, are you actively researching any other new medical device solutions?
Yeah, for sure. I think as a medical device company, our focus is always on innovation and what else we can bring to patients to make an impact for them. I think two areas that we're really, really interested in right now is the neuropathy that patients experience. So for those that aren't familiar, chemotherapy patients would experience a lot of pain and sometimes even up to a loss of movement in their hands and feet, which can be very debilitating. A lot of people aren't able to work in manual jobs afterwards or able to perform basic activities of daily living. So we're looking at developing a device which can prevent that damage to the peripheral nerves that's caused by chemotherapy. And then we're also looking at the infertility space for chemotherapy patients as well. So again, some of your listeners might be familiar, but young patients, typically young women with breast cancer, often have to make very difficult decisions about their future fertility when they're going through chemotherapy treatment. So, for example, a patient might be told that they have a week or two to get a very invasive procedure to be able to have children again after they've had chemotherapy. And so for us, we're looking at how can we make a non-surgical alternative to that that's able to stop chemo from interrupting and destroying the reproductive organs in both men and women. So that's a really exciting area for us to be in as well.
And Aaron, finally, are you building this business to keep it or to sell it?
So for us, I think the business plan is definitely to continue to grow. Our aim is to be the company that is there for patients throughout their cancer treatment, and that we're providing innovative products that totally transform the way that people experience cancer treatment, so that people can, number one, be themselves throughout treatment and also continue to live their life after treatment without experiencing extreme pain and without experiencing long-term side effects like infertility. And so our focus is to continue to grow, to keep the company, and to continue to offer these solutions to patients in Ireland and throughout the world.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Aaron Hannon from Luminate Medical, and it's great to see innovation seeking to make a tangible benefit to people's lives.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.